How did the United States end up in this position with a desperate shortage of coronavirus tests, a shortage of supplies to administer these tests, even a shortage of protective equipment for medical workers? The U.S. government knew the virus was coming back in the beginning of January. On January 8th, when the CDC published an emergency health advisory on a reported cluster of pneumonia of unknown origin in Wuhan, China. Medical experts tell CNN the Trump administration failed to act at this critical time.
What we see is the lack of preparation over the last 2 months has now put us in a terrible position.
In late January, the first U.S. case of coronavirus was identified in Washington state. But while Chinese officials began locking down the city of Wuhan, President Trump was in Davos, Switzerland, telling the world that China's problem would not be the world's pandemic.
We have it totally under control.
Trump barred most non-U.S. citizens from flights coming in from China, but behind the scenes, mistakes were already being made. As the numbers climbed to 35,000 cases worldwide, the CDC was creating its own coronavirus tests, a slower process that included sending the test to public health labs to make sure the test would work. Those public labs found out the test was flawed.
So they immediately reported that, and CDC began an investigation very quickly. But more and more labs, as they were verifying this through the coming days, also found the same problem.
For 3 crucial weeks, testing was at a near standstill while the CDC tried to fix the problem and the U.S. health system was flying blind. The virus spreading across America, and U.S. health officials had no way to test for it.
That kept us from having visibility on domestic transmission of the virus for weeks and weeks and weeks.
When the CDC's new test was finally fixed and ready, there weren't enough to fill demand. This letter shows public health laboratories begging the FDA to relax restrictions and allow them to create their own tests. It happened within days, but in a race to contain it, the virus was well ahead. By March 6th, there are 100,000 cases worldwide and more confusion from the administration.
Anybody that wants a test can get a test.
When the president said these words, across the country, shortages were everywhere. Today, the shortages of tests include just about everything needed to administer the test.
There are shortages on many pieces of it.
Public health officials say it just didn't need to be this bad. 2 years earlier, the White House made another potentially dangerous mistake, laying aside the pandemic response unit within the National Security Council, though the White House says the same roles exist, just under different titles. The team President Obama had bolstered to combat global pandemics after an Ebola outbreak was gone. Critics say that Trump administration decision hampered efforts with coronavirus.
I think it made us slower and it made us more prone to mistakes.
Jeremy Konyndyk, who used to run foreign disaster assistance for USAID, says all the shortages, from testing to swabs to masks, can, in part, be traced back to that one decision. Beth Cameron, who under Barack Obama ran the pandemic response unit, says there is no doubt.
But would we have gotten more ahead of this if the office had still been intact? I think absolutely.
The president, who alternately said he didn't know anything about disbanding the pandemic team and also defended it, now denies his coronavirus response has been anything but perfect.
We were very prepared. The only thing we weren't prepared for was the media.
Drew Griffin, CNN, Atlanta.